even though you have Kirby at number one, I think there's probably an argument to be made that he still is not being perceived nationally, maybe the way he should be. And that's because not because of production or anything like that, just simply because if you're a national college football fan and you don't follow the SEC as someone down here would, then maybe you don't realize exactly what he did with the program this year and the things that even a number one Georgia had to work through to achieve what they achieved this season. So, I mean, he was crowned SEC Coach of the Year this year. He was a finalist, I believe, for the national award, or at least was in consideration, but he didn't win it. But coming off of last year's team, I mean, that team lost 15 in the draft. Everybody knows about that. They also lost another 10 to transfer. He lost his defensive coordinator. So to be able to take that, mold it into a unit that hit the field this year without being the guys the previous season, get them to play up to their potential and get back and win the national championship. I just think there's a lot to be said for that. So I agree with your ranking completely. I mean, he today is the number one coach in the sport. Now, obviously this can be a year-to-year thing, but I just think that even with the recognition he's received, if you really dig into it, he did a lot to make sure that Georgia stayed where they are.
And I know that going forward, let's say Georgia wins 11 or 12 games, they go to the playoff, they lose in the semifinal, let's say. I may still rank him number one next year. Probably will. I'm not going to consider that necessarily, unless Saban. If Saban wins a national championship, I may flip flop him. But I think I try to take things into context and also look beyond just flat out wins and losses per se, even though you obviously start with the wins and losses, and then looking at what you pointed to at the beginning of the call was kind of the national awards that come out. As you well know, those are always going to go to the guy that took over the program and had a major jump, took somebody not expected to do well, and i.e., of course, Sonny Dykes, Mike Elko at Duke. They're going to get more attention because it's impressive to see somebody take over a bad football team and elevate them considerably.
I agree. I mean, that's the run of the mill. And that's why I say what I said, right? I mean, here in the SEC, everybody knows what it is because we know the lay of the land. But once you step outside the footprint, which is growing, but once you step outside, you're not necessarily paying attention to the University of Georgia the way I am. You know, you're just not going to know that. And that's fair. That's part of the reason I enjoy shows like this one, because I enjoy the Apple Cup and I enjoy, Pac-12 After Dark and all those things, but I can't tell you, their defensive line and all that stuff. So I jump on here. I enjoy these shows because you guys help educate me about the national scene. Now, I have a 30,000 foot view on the national scene because I cover the sport, but it's just one of those things where I can't drill down. You just can't. There's too many teams, too many players. Yeah. But I can come on here, and thanks to the guys that you bring on, they help me have insight. So, like, Matt Zimick with USC. Like, I've been hooked up with Matt for a while. I lost him for a minute, and then I rediscovered him through your USC channel, even though he had followed me on Twitter forever. So it's one of those things where it just helps me keep my fingers in the pie, if you will, and know what's going on. But I think the proof is in the pudding when it comes to Kirby, because here's the deal. 2021, that was a historical defense. Now, 2022, probably not as good. Well, definitely not as good defensively. Not bad. I think they finished 13 or 14 points after what happened with LSU at a championship game.
Yeah.
But and then Ohio State, right?
Sure.
That inflated that number. But the defense was good, and it's going to be. I think it's going to rival the 21 team here in 23. But that's another discussion. But the fact that He lost his DC last year, had to replace them. This is going to be the first opportunity he has to win a national title with a quarterback not named Stetson Bennett and an offensive coordinator not named Todd Monken. So he has some experience as, getting good people back in there in coordinator roles. But let's be honest, in 2016, 2017, there were misses at the coordinator positions. Now, that says nothing about how I feel about Bobo. I think he's going to be just fine. As a matter of fact, I think this Georgia offense is going to hum next year. But the proof will be in the pudding. Does he make another solid hire at coordinator? Get them in there, keep the system. At this point, it's a system offensively for Georgia. Bobo was on the staff. They're going to continue that. Talent will take over. They will continue to work and develop. But if they go out and, it looks like a 1-game season, Tennessee, but let's say it's a 3-game season. Mississippi could be tricky. Tennessee's on the road. We always play Florida. Florida's down, but I can't help but respect them just a little bit. So if it's a 3-game season, odds are even if they drop one, they're still in the tournament with the Final Four. And, I think you'd have to do a lot to wreck it. But how good can they be? Can they achieve what they achieved this year with another conference championship? Can they get back and do the unprecedented at a 3-peat? So I don't know. Again, I'm walking in high cotton over here, and I understand that. I lived through Ray Goff and Jim Donnan 8-4, and I know, but I'm just saying it's interesting that you can be on top like he is, and still make a case that he's still not recognized nationally.
Mm-hmm. Well, you pointed out a few things that he accomplished this year that add to his legacy, add to his credentials. Obviously, the championship, but beyond that, the loss of 5 first-rounders, 15 NFL draft picks, the loss of coordinators, the transitions that he's had to make. Well, when you look at, and this is why it's difficult sometimes to rank, even though we know Jimbo Fisher can coach a football team, even though that's being questioned more and more by the year, but he won 1 national championship. Mac Brown won 1 national championship. So there's some hesitancy and some doubt as to how much they delivered versus Jameis Winston, Vince Young. They had 1 shot. They had 1 team. Did that team just kind of carry that coach? But Kirby Smart now proves a second year with loss of players and coordinators. He does it. Now, if he's able to do it with another quarterback, then he shows he can do it with multiple quarterbacks. An Urban Meyer or a Nick Saban show that they can do it in multiple programs. That's a whole other dimension to that.
And your point is very well taken. Do you catch lightning in a bottle like with Cam Newton and Auburn?
Yeah. Ed Orgeron, Joe Burrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or is it the program? Is it what Kirby says it is, which is good bones built to sustain, and then you do what you have to do. You make the investments and you carry it forward. And again, time will tell. The last time I was on, I told you, I don't think we're talking about dynasties or anything else right now. I just think that the opportunity is there for this team to be better. And what's interesting, we were talking about it in the chat a little bit earlier about what coaching is about. Obviously it's Jimmy's and Joe's. You have to have players, but I think coaching at that level, when you're up in the top tier, and there's a handful of schools that are there. When you're there, the thing that separates the super great coaches from, the really good coaches is what kind of a leader of men are you? What kind of motivator are you? How do you generate that fire and keep everything fresh and new? For the 22 squad for Georgia, it was simple. Kirby said it flatly at SEC Media Days. These guys haven't achieved anything. They have no laurels to rest on. And as we move into 23, that coin is completely flipped. This team was very young, and there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, I did it last year. So that edge cuts 2 ways. Complacency is on one side, but the other side is that means you know how to get it done, and you have experience having done it. So that's where the coach comes in. which way do you let that knife cut? And I'm listening to Kirby talk about keeping himself motivated and what it requires to be great and successful. And it's a phrase you've heard other places. I guess it started with John Wooden, but to be great, you don't have a choice. You have to do the things that greatness requires. And you have to do things that other people aren't willing to do. So I don't think Kirby's just saying those things. I think that's who he is. And based on like what I pointed out earlier, a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, frankly, I think Kirby is using that for his own personal motivation to say, I think I can do it with a new quarterback. I think I can do it with a new OC. I think that's his personal motivation. And I think that's going to bleed through to the team. So when you watch Georgia this fall, I think you're going to see that. And again, first world topics here, but I really think that Kirby is he means what he says.